Hi, welcome to On Air. I'm Klara Syrewicz. They are the world's deadliest gadgets, redefining battlefields and procurement lists. Today we examine drones and their transformative role in warfare. They can do this. And they now account for nearly 2/3 of battlefield deaths in Ukraine. They're everywhere, in the air, on land, at sea and underwater. Some, like Turkey's latest invention, are launched from the water's surface. They carry cameras, thermal sensors, as well as bombs and guns. Certain models lie dormant by roadsides and are stirred to life by an unsuspecting human or passing vehicle. They run on radio signals or fiber-optic cables, which now litter Ukraine like grim tinsel. And in Gaza, aside from spying and killing, they issue displacement orders and frighten civilians with loud noises. Drones, also called unmanned aerial vehicles, come in all shapes and sizes. Turkey's large Baykar models helped stall the initial Russian assault. Iran's Shahed suicide drones terrorize Ukrainian cities. And China's Mavic, a hobbyist toy so small it fits in the palm of your hand, has been repurposed into a remarkably efficient killer. A civilian drone worth about €2,000 can now take out a tank worth millions. And one pilot sitting kilometers away does the work of an entire reconnaissance company. Historically, military success has been inextricably tied to technological innovation. Though Professor Michael Clark insists wars are never won by a single technology, drones have undeniably taken centre stage in Ukraine. A 20th century tanks and artillery clash has morphed into a sci-fi war of attrition, or more accurately, a hellscape. At any moment, up to 10,000 drones crowd the skies above what used to be a front line, now a 20-kilometre wide killing zone. Here, drones hunt soldiers and civilians alike. If they spot you, every weapon nearby rushes in for the kill. Supplying frontline units with ammunition, medicine, food, or even water has become nearly impossible by conventional means, except by drone, as enemy UAVs ambush convoys.
The Russian army is trying to make a kill zone as wide as possible, to make it a completely bare wasteland where it's impossible to hide. Most soldiers currently die during rotation. Any kind of delivery bears grave risks, so we use drones more often.
Wounded soldiers often wait days, sometimes weeks for evacuation. Many walk, get carried or even crawl 5 kilometers to a spot where vehicles can approach. Then those vehicles dodge swarms of drones operating as far as 40 kilometers from the front. Open source analysts report that on the Russian side, many wounded are abandoned because extracting them is too dangerous. When Ukrainian medics can't reach the wounded, they resort to TV medicine, guiding stranded soldiers using Mavics. On occasion, ground robots handle the evacuation if they can safely make it out. Drones now also fight other drones, and soldiers are surrendering to machines. With AI advances, entire swarms may soon conduct missions largely on their own, sharing data, plotting tactics, selecting and eliminating targets. A recent report suggests such systems are already operational. Welcome to a reality that's part Terminator, part Fortnite. Believe it or not, the first real drone war was Vietnam. Back then, systems like the air-launched Lightning Bug collected intelligence without risking pilots or aircraft. But once the conflict ended, so did the enthusiasm and the budget for further development. But after 9/11, when the US found itself fighting in difficult terrain against insurgents with no air defenses, the age of the megadrone had arrived. Purpose-built platforms like the Predator could detect human heat signatures, launch missiles and remain airborne for nearly 40 hours, controlled by operators thousands of miles away. But their price tag wasn't lightweight. Even today, the Predator's successor, the Reaper, costs roughly 30 million euros. Then in 2020 came a wake-up call for military planners. In the 6-week Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, Azerbaijan's relatively inexpensive Turkish drones proved crucial in forcing Armenians to cede control of the disputed region. By that time, the civilian UAV market had already exploded. Suddenly, you could walk into a shop and get a compact, mass-produced model with live streaming cameras for a few €100 that could be flown by a child. And towering over it all was DJI, a Chinese firm founded in 2006 that had evolved into the Apple or perhaps Microsoft of consumer drones, commanding roughly 70% of the market. It didn't take long for Ukraine and then Russia to recognize the potential of DJI's consumer lineup. The Agras, built to haul 120 kilos of fertilizer, suddenly became a supply mule and medevac lifter, and the tiny off-the-shelf Mavic, a mini bomber. In short, two major shifts have reshaped the battlefield. The first concerns the widening gap between what it takes to attack versus what it costs to defend. Take Iran's Shahed suicide drone. Functionally, it differs little from a guided missile. It's not, to put it mildly, a technological marvel. Nothing revolutionary here. And according to a CSIS analysis, fewer than 10% reach their targets. The remaining 90% are intercepted or fail en route. By comparison, Russia's Iskander-M and Kh-22 missiles hit their marks roughly 90% of the time. Except a Shahed costs about 17,000 euros, and it can be easily mass-produced. Now, stack that against defence costs. A Patriot battery runs close to 1 billion euros. That's 350 million for the hardware and 600 million for the missiles, while a single interceptor costs 3.5 million. So even if drones don't always do big damage, a swarm of them can drain an opponent's budget by forcing them to fire exorbitantly priced defences at €1,000 toy. And when that toy hits, it can wipe out equipment worth millions. The second major shift is the rise of first-person view, or FPV, drones. These function as low-cost loitering grenades flown directly into targets, supported by stabilization systems that enable them to hover. They are guided through video streamed to an operator's tablet. They dominate the airspace below 600 meters, making it impossible for soldiers or civilians to move around safely. When troops are pinned by artillery shells, at least the randomness offers a slim margin of survival. FPVs offer none. These things chase you. They're fast and they squeeze through gaps like an open hatch or a dugout, then they explode. And now there's a new breed that can detonate near you before contact like a cluster bomb. If you're short on counter-drones, your last kinetic line of defense is a shotgun. You literally have to pelt them with bullets and pray you hit before they reach you or self-detonate. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry has recently authorized a new type of ammunition that fragments in mid-air, effectively upgrading the gun's anti-drones capabilities. But the problem, of course, is even if you manage to shoot one down, they're so cheap and numerous that another one will fly in soon enough to finish the job. Swarm attacks, where hundreds of drones strike from multiple directions, are considered virtually unstoppable. It's the stuff of nightmares. The little buzz sound paralyzes you with fear and will probably trigger PTSD for decades. On today's battlefield, your best chance of staying alive or slipping behind enemy lines is foul weather. Rain and fog means troops move because drones can't. This is how Russian forces finally broke through Ukrainian defences in Pokrovsk this month, after a year of trying. Otherwise, the best defence is signal jamming. Except you can't jam fiber-optic drones. And they can skim the ground or fly inside buildings, as long as the cable survives. The only real way to stop them is to send another drone after them or literally cut the cord. This emerging form of conflict is defined by the sheer speed at which innovation and mass production must be conjured. Each new model triggers an immediate adjustment in the opponent's countermeasures. Development cycles now run weekly. Local production lines are set up in months to replace the tons of equipment burned through daily, and new pilots must be trained fast. All this at an often terrifying human cost. To increase output while facing severe labour shortages from heavy war casualties, Russia has been using African workers, largely women, tricked into modern-day slavery at its drone factories. But it has now progressed to using children as well. A new investigation by Christo Grozev's Insider reports that hundreds of thousands of Russian school kids are assembling drones used to kill Ukrainians. Russian authorities also systematically involve children in the design and testing of drones for the war through nationwide competitions that start with seemingly innocent video games but end with the sharpest kids funneled to defense firms, while other children are put to work building larger drones for the war. A documentary aired on the Russian Army's TV channel even showed teenagers helping build kamikaze drones in what it proudly called the world's biggest strike drone factory. Less to say that employing children, especially in military facilities which could be legitimately targeted in wartime, violates just about any international convention. The state also grooms drone pilots through Zarnitsa 2.0, a patriotic military game now mandatory in most Russian schools. Even 7-year-olds learn to fly quadcopters while older kids run recon drones, compete in airgun contests and race to take apart Kalashnikovs. By 2025, over 240,000 students will have completed the game's drone simulator. Both sides of the conflict know drone operators matter more than the equipment. Ukraine's spiderweb operations, where small drones were slipped into Russia and crippled bombers worth billions, proved that skills beat sheer numbers. And the war has shown you can ramp up drone production fast, but the real bottleneck is training operators with the skill and battlefield experience to use them properly. A UN Commission of Inquiry report has found evidence of crimes against humanity committed by Russian FPV pilots, proving the systematic use of civilians in Kherson as training targets for new drone operators. In this footage, a man walks his dog along a road, white flag in hand. Both are killed. Further up, a second man with a white flag barely crosses himself before a drone explodes nearby. On a highway out of the city, civilians drive at breakneck speed to survive, while pedestrians hug buildings and hide under trees just to make it through the streets alive. There's no need to document these crimes. Russian drone operators post them to their socials and set them to music. Channel 4 News found many are young, in their 20s, acting like influencers, posting dehumanizing messages about the Ukrainians they target. It's a gamification of war that pits kids playing techno on their headphones against elderly people on bikes. A terrifying echo of another prescient 1980s classic, the science fiction novel Ender's Game. In it, children are trained to unwittingly pilot swarms of drones in a space war under the illusion that they are just playing a game.
Technically, something like that is already feasible. A drone pilot could sit anywhere in the world and operate their weapons at a distance, not knowing whether their screens are showing them a simulation of combat or an actual feed from the front.
Given the recent incidents of drone incursions into EU territory, including the latest one this Tuesday in Romania, Europe must now seriously consider the possibility that Russia could employ UAVs carrying warheads against European states. Equally plausible are attempts to penetrate sensitive zones, particularly urban areas, to spy, paralyze air traffic and critical infrastructure, or worse. In this dystopian but sadly plausible scenario, the killing machines already lie in waiting in some warehouse at the heart of Europe, ready to strike when the time comes. And once they start shooting, chances are they will be piloted by kids. While the human toll of the war reaches staggering levels, another casualty is often overlooked: the environment. Rusting hardware, pulverized buildings and drone debris with the toxic batteries and fiber-optic wiring now blanket the Ukrainian countryside. Scattered landmines kill animals and block cleanup efforts. Black Sea ecosystems are collapsing under constant military interference. The Kakhovka Dam explosion has triggered an ecological disaster comparable to Chernobyl.
Ukraine. Fires scorch forests. Toxic smoke chokes the air. And chemicals seep into soil and rivers. Entire habitats are disappearing. Prosecutors have opened 247 cases of environmental war crimes. 14 are classified as ecocide, involving large-scale destruction of the environment. The single largest environmental event was the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam in June of 2023. The breach released 14 trillion liters of water, sending toxic sediments downstream and flooding settlements. Marine ecosystems in the Black Sea were hit during peak reproductive season, while upstream farmland dried and crop yields collapsed. Sunflower harvests in nearby regions dropped to 1/10 of the previous year.
Колись тут дуже гарно ловилась риба, було гарно, був пляж.
You used to be able to catch good fish here. It was nice. There was a beach. I used to come here to relax, look at the people, see how it was. And then those bad people caused us so much misery.
Велике нещастя.
In Donbass, abandoned coal mines are flooding with toxic water, while millions of artillery shells have contaminated Ukraine's prized Chernozem, some of the world's richest soil. Wildfires in forests burn out of control, destroying pine plantations and releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide. Along the Black Sea, environmentalists report mass die-offs of dolphins, possibly 50,000 in the first year of the invasion, linked to Russian naval sonars. Flamingo colonies have collapsed as low-flying drones scatter nesting birds, leaving their eggs exposed to predators. Ukraine estimates environmental losses exceed $85 billion. And even if the fighting stopped tomorrow, demining, rebuilding water systems, and restoring poisoned land could take decades.
Ukraine's geopolitical and environmental future now hinges on unprecedented restoration efforts. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.